move on to item 4, new ground update. I'll ask Paul Miller to give us the update.
Okay, somehow I ended up with this job. It's an awful lot of work, I'm sure you, but to be fair to my fellow directors, everyone's chipping in. But I've just made some notes, so I'm always going to read them out because it will give you everything you want. I'm guessing a lot of you have looked at the plans at the back. They're not updated. I've got a feeling there's a newer set of plans than that, but I couldn't find them. The changing rooms have changed slightly. I think the important thing is those of you that know the pitfalls that maybe have happened to AFC Tottenham, is we've learned from that, and we've all been on various visits to different grounds. We've looked at the pluses. Actually, I'm just going to start again. Although that's relevant, I think it's important to say that although we're as a directors of the club, the decision was made that it was felt to be in the best interests of the club and the supporters that we, given the opportunity, that we would move grounds. Because I'm saying that assuming that everyone agrees with it, and that won't be the case. So if I say the reasoning behind that first, and then I'll go on to what I was saying before. You may or may not be aware that our lease ran out about 3 or 4 years ago here, and so we're currently on a rolling lease. We tried our hardest to renew the lease. The land is owned by Hannah Estate, and although we didn't know it at the time, they stalled and didn't allow us to renew the lease. Obviously that's come to a fore now, where they obviously knew that they'd been approached by a developer with a view to building houses on the land that is currently situated in the football club and the 2 pitches, right the way down to the river, and consequently the allotments as well. So within reason, I would suggest that if we dug our heels in, we could stop it from happening, probably, but it would probably be a long legal battle. But the bottom line is, we haven't really, if I'm honest, got a lot of choice in that we've only got a year's rolling lease, which we could contest, but it would probably be a lengthy and expensive legal procedure. Now that said, you've only got to look around you. The place is old, it's kind of fallen down, it's uninsulated, it costs an awful lot of money just to keep the place running. Our utility bills are horribly expensive, and I think the general consensus was that for the future of the club, when we're all long gone, that the new facility really would be foolish not to accept that. We appreciate that there's a lot of history here, and hopefully within reason, we can take whatever we can down to the new ground should it actually ever happen. So maybe I haven't even put that in my notes, but that's how I feel from the heart. So we understand that it's just something that probably has to happen. Otherwise, long term, life could be made difficult for us from our land, from the landowner, and also in terms of, again, I keep talking about what I was just saying, with the sustainability of running this place is not easy. There's constant repairs, and obviously that's all costs money all the time. So on a positive, Wyatt Homes basically, and this is kind of old news really, but Wyatt Homes have bought an option on this land to build 180 houses. They are working really hard and in full cooperation with the football club, and likewise that's vice versa. We're working with them to try and give them every assistance possible. Picking up where I finished just now, we visited various clubs. We've picked up things that have gone horribly wrong, like Tottenham not building their pitch big enough, to making sure that we get the correct facilities that will make Wimbledon Town Football Club as a business able to support itself in terms of what it does during the working week, and rooms that can be hired out, etc, etc. So I won't go into too much detail about it, but a lot of thought and consideration has gone into that. We've been working with Wyatt Homes architects, which you've obviously seen the beginnings of the plans up there. We've worked closely with Steve in terms of what his requirements are, in terms of the changing rooms and physio room and space for things that they need in the change room and what the players would need. obviously there's the FA criteria that's got to be met in terms of what we've got now, we can get away with and make good. When you're building a new ground, there's a whole new set of regulations that have got to be adhered to, and you don't get any grace at all. If it's a new ground, it has to be, all those things need to be have boxes ticked. So again, White Homes have done their homework, we've had to do our homework to make sure that we get everything in place. Things like a second referee's room in case there's a female official, all those things are meant to be taken into consideration. Treatment room for fans that's accessible by not going through the change room. The list is endless. It goes on and on and on and on. So credit to White Homes, they've worked really hard on that, and obviously that's been with our input as well. We've twisted their arm a fair bit in terms of what we feel we need as a requirement. Whether that will get through planning, we'll have to see. In a nutshell, if you're not aware of where it is, the actual road that we will effectively be on is called Parliament Way, which is just outside of Wimborne, towards what is now Tops Nursery, what used to be called the Winston Churchill. It's on the opposite side of the road. Before you get there, there's a little estate with bungalows on it. If you take Parliament Drive Way, it's literally a straight road with a 5-bar gate at the end of it. So the proposal is that basically the road will go straight on. Initially there will be a 10-acre buffer between the existing houses and what would effectively be our new ground, and then long term that whole area between Brook Road Industrial Estate, as it is, because we will effectively back onto Brook Road Industrial Estate and the bypass with the allotments in between. Literally the whole triangle right the way up to virtually the Cuthbury roundabout, probably over the next 20 years will be infilled with a football club, hopefully, a new school, and an awful lot of houses. So I would suspect probably around 400 to 500 houses right the way through. So there's a lot there. I've personally been involved with a lot of meetings with council. There was one last week. This is all, if anyone wants to look it up, if you haven't done already, it's all part of what they call the East Dorset Core Strategy. And so we're just a small part of the jigsaw, although I would suggest we're quite an important part of the jigsaw, given that obviously they can't build any new houses here unless they relocate us, and that kind of, it's all, in actual fact, it's a bit of a mathematical game to the developer, because they can only provide us with what would probably be a £2.5 million facility if they can build enough houses to also make enough money to make sure they pay for the £2.5 million facility. So from that respect, it's quite exciting, to be fair. It's a lot of work. I think we need it to help take the club forward. We've spoken about the youth, we've spoken about the reserves, we've spoken about the under 18s, and I think all these things are going to help take the club forward into the future. And as I mentioned before, although we will have the infrastructure in place to take us to at least Conference League South level. Now that doesn't mean the day we move in, we will have a stadium that is effectively like Dorchester's, for example. What it means is that the perimeter walls will allow for us to go out and buy arena seating to make a new stand, for example. A little bit like they've done at Eastleigh, and that's something that we know there, that they put the infrastructure in place that as they go up the leagues, they can just literally wheel seats in to increase the number of people. So that's obviously quite a big part of what's going on at the football club. In terms of time frame, it was meant to go to the Secretary of State. Basically, to explain fairly quickly, is East Dorset have put together this core strategy. It goes out to public consultation, it comes back, they put all the answers together, they create some magical thing that they then sort of write down. For some reason or another, it's gone back out to public consultation, and that then, the results of that then go to the Secretary of State. But they were meant to go into the Secretary of State this month, but I've been led to believe that that's not going to go to the Secretary of State now until next March. And I think that's an ongoing thing with anything of this size. And when I say this size, it's not just the football club and what White Homes are doing. There's an awful lot of other sites that are earmarked, much, much bigger than this, there's a huge site as you drive out of Wimborne towards Cranwell, which is actually creating quite a lot of debate. And if anything, that's probably what's holding it up. On a positive point of view, there's barely been any objections to the football club all home. A football club moving to Parmenter Way, there's been obviously a few objections from the people that live at Parmenter, but they're fairly unsustainable objections. And there's also no objection to houses being built here. So in terms of what potentially might happen to the football club, it's not coming up against a lot of opposition. So I think most people appreciate, well, two things. I think people locally would rather have houses here than a football club, and there's enough space between the current houses where they potentially want to put us that really we're not going to make any disturbance to the local residents there. I think traffic is probably the main concern. That is the way it's going to be going in and out, is through Parmenter Way. Something that's probably worth making a note of, because I get asked this question, probably the most single question I get asked, is the council keep referring to the site that we're going to go to as a sports village, and they continually mention Wimborne Rugby Club. Now, we've spoken about it. We've got not a lot of interest in rugby in terms of being involved with them. They've got absolutely no interest in being involved with us, and Wyatt Holmes have got no interest in Wimborne Rugby Club either. And the main reason for that is it costs Wyatt Holmes or a developer the same amount of money as it would to relocate us, and there's a lot of objection to any further housing at Knight Park. And even if they did build houses at Knight Park, it wouldn't be sustainable enough, or it wouldn't be valuable enough for them to make enough money to build the homes and relocate Wimborne Rugby Club. So generally speaking, to our knowledge, to Wyatt Holmes' knowledge, and to Hannam Estates' knowledge, there's no tie-up between us and Wimborne Rugby Club. The only potentially, if the rugby club do ever move, was a site that we were offered by another developer, which is opposite the Fox and Hounds, which obviously would be a long way out of Wimborne. For that and other reasons, that's something we didn't choose to explore that avenue any further. So we've stuck with Wyatt Holmes. We've worked with Wyatt Holmes now for about 3.5 years on the whole thing. And in terms of time frames going forward, I would suggest at best it's probably another 3.5 years. If that said, Wyatt Holmes are looking to put in planning permission. As it stands, and things do change a lot when you're dealing with the council and the government, they're looking to put in planning permission possibly in December of this year, but again, potentially the whole process of what's involved in that will probably take a good 18 months. So you can, if everything was to go to plan, I think you're looking at probably at best the 2016 season if we were to move to the new ground. So that's pretty much it really. It is a very slow process. Things happen extremely slowly with the council. To give the councils credit, they've got a lot of plans for Wimborne in general, and I think it's a positive. I've been a Wimborne resident all my life, very much like most of you, and I think what they're planning to do, they do get some stick, but I think what they're planning to do is of a positive nature for the town, and I would hope if you do live locally that you might help support it. That's about it really, unless anyone's got any questions.
Do we get any financing from the FA, with the setup we've got? Because we've got to use the lot.
Well, Ken's going to come on to it later. Basically, Wyatt Holmes are uneligible for any form of grant. Because they are a limited company, they are uneligible for any type of grant. We as a football club can get grants from the FA, which is a stadium improvement, a new stadium improvement fund grant, which again, it depends on what league you play in to how much you get, but I think again it's one of the rules that's just been changed. I think we can actually apply, I'm not saying we'll get it, but you can apply for up to 50% of the cost of the stadium. So we will, as a matter of course, do that. We've got a guy working for us who's get paid, but he probably earns money off sourcing grants and that sort of thing. Like James Gregory's working on our behalf to source grants. The biggest problem we've got, of course, at the moment is there might be a grant available now, but it might not be available in 3 years' time when we move. So what he's effectively doing is making us aware of different things and how they work and that sort of thing. And again, in itself, that's a lot of work. And I've actually made a note here. If anyone is familiar with form filling or applying for grants, then it would be a huge help if there was a volunteer to just help us in terms of filling forms out for grant applications and that sort of thing, because it's hugely time consuming, and obviously we're busy with other stuff and other things. It would just be one aspect that would help us. The league that we play in defines a certain amount of money that we get. So if we stay where we are, for example, I think we're eligible for about 275,000. If we play in the league above, it's something like 450,000. And I would suggest that's again why Paul will push for promotion with the possibility of their new ground, because they would have been worth quite a lot of money to them. So now that all said, we are a limited company ourselves, so there is a lot of grants that we're not eligible for ourselves. So a charity has been set up called Wimborne Town in the Community, and really there's obviously quite a lot of purposes for it, but predominantly to do with this meeting. It's really to increase the awareness locally of Wimborne Town Football Club, although it's not restricted to football. We have started to go into local schools as the charity to make people aware, and most importantly kids, because kids go over and tell their parents that they want to come to Wimborne Town Football Club. So the charity is working in that respect to raise the awareness of the football club, but also it will work as a platform, if you like, to raise funds for the new ground and beyond, really, because there's grants that the charity can apply for that the Wimborne Town Football Club Limited can't apply for, simply because it's a limited company, whereas the charity as a charity is eligible for a lot more grants than a limited company. So that's something we're working hard on as well to create money. Chris?
Yeah, just a little bit I know about charities and getting grants. With some charities, there's a rule that you have to actually own the property to get the grants. Is that?
Yeah,
is
one of the things that we, I mean, not only not maybe own the property, but you've certainly got to have a 7-year tenure, and that's something that again we're coming up against. I mentioned earlier about only having a rolling lease, and we've been speaking to the trustees of Hannah Estate with the guy that deals with grants, to make them aware that we are losing money because there's grants that are available to us that we can't actually apply for because we haven't got a 7-year lease. So it's something everyone's aware of. I think the biggest problem is it's that legal not knowing. You know, they give us a 7-year lease, we decide that we don't want to move grounds, and all of a sudden they've lost 40 million quid. So I think as much as they would like to help us, I think the legalities of drawing up a 7-year lease, I think they're a bit worried it's going to come back and kick them in the backside.
Well, have you any sort of issues around sort of green belt industry?
Well, the thing is, obviously both sides are greenbelt land, and which is an issue in itself. But the East Dorset Core Strategy, that is effectively what it's all about. It's about the government allowing East Dorset District Council to build on greenbelt land. So although there is an obvious issue in terms of building on greenbelt land, I think there's a bigger issue, certainly in the district of East Dorset, where they're just not creating enough homes for local people or affordable homes. So a huge part of the whole project is, I think if they build 1,000 homes, probably 600 of them will be affordable homes. So I think, given that Eastall's sort of the worst performing council in the country, I think they will have to sacrifice Greenbelt land for home.
Yeah,
But I think, Paul, they said at one meeting that if their plan goes ahead, it would use up 0.5% or something of the available green.
Yeah, it isn't a huge amount. Although this seems an awful large bit of land, I think we're on 8 acres or something.
Yes, did you
I
want
think
to come in? Sorry.
The district,
Yeah,
district council
Yeah.
came up against a problem when they started this poor strategy.
Yeah.
They thought they were going to be able to build hundreds of houses in Westmoor and Ferndown and Verwood and St Ives, and then when they got some way along with that, thinking that's the way to do it, they were told, most of the sites you've got in those parishes are too close to heathland or to forest land, and under the rules you won't be able to build all those houses, only little bits of those. So they thought, where do we build houses then? And they realised they've got to build them in Wimborne or around Wimborne, because that doesn't apply there.
It's spot on there. It's 4 kilometres from a conservation site, which Holt Heath is, and so you go 4 kilometres in any direction from Holt Heath, and you're into Verwood and all those. There is one site of Verwood, I think. Dennis?
Well, I can't imagine that you wouldn't have support from the local council, from the planning people. If you're looking to provide that many new homes, then I would urge the club to keep following the links of sport in the community. I mean, that's your area, Steve. You know that's the sort of thing that you deal with. Providing the facilities for all of those new houses, having a school built right next door as well. So absolutely, we couldn't have wished for a better site than that.
No.
And build links with the local community. What are have we explored the avenues of support from the council in terms of financial? I know as a limited company we might have a little.
I think the problem with the council is
sounds a good idea.
the council they haven't really got the money themselves, and I think if they support us, then it opens a little bit of a can of worms in terms of supporting other sports clubs. Where does it stop?
Right.
One of the things which isn't really relevant, but just to quickly give you an insight, they're proposing to knock down the Allendale Centre in Wimbledon and but replace it with a new building with the same and better facilities, but also go higher with it and actually create a council office building that may even incorporate administration for the police and the fire, so effectively be a community building on the ground floor, pretty much like it is at the moment, but maybe with 3 floors above it that would house a lot of administration. But to enable them to do that, the only funds they've got available to them is the money they raise from the sale of the current council offices at Furze Hill. So if they were to get 5 million from that, then they've only got 5 million to spend in Wimbledon. So they're not going to come to us saying here's £1 million or anything like that. I think it's going to be. I think White Homes, within reason, will give us everything that we require. What they're not going to give us is luxuries. So I think we've got to be realistic in, the day we move in there, it's not going to be a finished job. I think that's something that's going to happen over a period of time afterwards in terms of getting, they'll put the seats in and they'll make sure we've got a kitchen and they'll make sure we've got a bar and they'll make sure we've got a skittle alley and everything else that we have got here, but they're not going to give us the luxuries that, long term the club's probably
So we
going to
need to plan for it to be
We
sustainable.
need to plan for it and we need to raise money for it.
They're not going to give us a stage and disco.
Yeah, sure.
No, exactly.
Do we want a stage in disco?
Yeah, we can.
Can I just clarify Plan B? I
Yeah.
think it's very right when you talk about the new ground and everything
Yeah.
else, but and planning is clearly the key obstacle.
Yeah.
But the second element of that is White Homes actually being able to deliver on what they say they can do, which is build
Yeah.
180 homes. And let's be honest, the economic climate is such that ain't going to be easy. And you could find yourself that they get a planning permission and they're not in a position to do that for 2 or 3 years. We then invest all our time, we as a club.
Yeah.
The club as you said earlier on, the club's not getting any better
No.
and any more
Well,
improved.
there is a
We tread water where we keep maintaining this place. We keep it up to scratch. Obviously, we have to maintain it, and we are already able to go to the next league if we wanted to. You know, so I don't see us in a matter of 3 years holding back any. If that's what you're saying. We have got the ability at the moment to carry on in the premises we have.
What about the rolling lease side of things?
The rolling lease, well, that carries on every year. I mean, the rolling lease, obviously, that protects us and that protects Wyatt Homes. If suddenly they were to get planning permission, they don't want us to have a 7-year lease, so they have to wait for 7 years before they start rolling. They want to get the permission, sort us out, start moving down at our place. The quicker they get our place done out there, up to scratch, ready to move, they can bulldoze this place. It's as simple as that.
They can't build here until we're out.
We're face value.
No,
But to answer your question,
the point I'm making is,
Yeah.
you know,
if it doesn't happen,
sorry, loads, so
Yeah,
this is
no, that's
before,
fine.
but I work for a bank and I know how
Oh,
it is.
my God.
No, it's
Mr. Diamond, Mr. Diamond.
So,
you know,
I know what Wyatt Homes
it's a really valid
It's one
question.
thing to get permission, but
Yeah.
you're talking about Wyatt Homes
Funding it.
who don't build 180 homes. You know, I know of the company.
Yeah.
They don't build 180 homes in one go.
No.
Well, they wouldn't anyway. They'd phase it. But the point I'm making is that is a substantial scheme for them to commit to. And I think you just need to be careful that the focus is not purely on once we've got planning, hey, away we go, because there
There's
are other
two
elements to
things,
that.
2 parts, 2 questions. Firstly, we've got every faith in what happens, but obviously the ultimate delivering is down to them. You know, both for our new ground and for the new. I mean, they're not going to build a new ground and then not build the houses. The whole thing needs to work because they need, one way or another. You know, they're business people. They've got.
But they've got to have all their ducks in a row to do the
Absolutely.
houses
Yeah,
before they're even
absolutely.
going to commit to the law.
If that doesn't happen, then the plan would then be, obviously, we're basically putting ourselves in a position with the charity, with the guy that we've got looking into grants and that sort of thing, then we can start looking at developing here. But the problem is, certainly since I've been here, and I'm sure Kevin will back me up from before my time here, is no one's ever wanted to do anything to the club because there's always been this thing hanging over it where they've always said, oh, you know, they're going to relocate us, they're going to turn the pitch around, they're going to do this, that and the other. And the bottom line is, it's never really happened, so therefore the club's in effect is being held back. I mean, there is no insulation in this building at all. And this year, due to the level of our utility bills, we've explored things like roof insulation, wall insulation, both in this building and the changing rooms. And it's like £3,500–4,000. So we know we need to do it, but we don't want to spend £3,500–4,000 for in 2 or 3 years' time Wyatt Homes to come and knock the place flat. So it's a kind of vicious circle. So in some respects, at least this way, I think this is the closest it's ever going to come into a head, where it's either going to happen or it's not. So if it doesn't happen, the plan then is to start investing in the football club. I mean, the place was leaking like a sieve until Brian kindly done some work to it. All these things then, one way or another, will get addressed. So we can apply for grants for repairs to the clubhouse. We could probably apply for grants for a new stand, for example, if we knew we were going to stay here. But at the moment, we've been asked by the developer not to apply for any grants because potentially that could, if we take a grant now and it's for, say, let's for argument's sake, say a new stand, and it was £100,000, potentially that grant's then gone out the window because we won't be able to take the stand with us, but to get a grant in the new ground might actually be worth £500,000. So it makes sense. And to be honest with you, you know what, I think it's important that Wimbledon Town Football Club becomes a facility for the community, and it's something I'm really keen to make happen. And it's not just available to the 300 loyal supporters that turn up when they can, week in, week out to football.
Do you also get the backing of the town council?
Yeah.
Because I always get the impression that the actual town council are not very keen on it.
Well, the town council, they're not very keen for us to be here.
No.
tell you that now because one of them lives opposite and she does it for me. So she's quite keen for us to move. But I think it's important that we as a football club and a business provide facilities for obviously girls sport, not just football, disabled sport. I think we need to make sure that the infrastructure that we've got is capable of giving local schools facilities that possibly they haven't got on their own grounds for two reasons. One, because it's nice to do it, you know, we want to involve the youth of Wimborne, and secondly, it also is an income revenue for the club, which again is going to make things more viable.
At the same time, being in the league that we're in now,
Yeah,
we've got a lot of teams coming from much further afield
yeah,
that have never heard of Wimborne before, and they bring their supporters,
yeah,
and they all say, oh, what a lovely little place it
yeah,
is.
yeah.
So there's a potential for them to come back to the area and bring money in anyway.
Yeah, and to be fair,
Yeah.
the you know, a lot of supporters, and we know some of the directors, they all go in Wimborne and they have a bit around and they all spend money, and the council are more than aware of that, and it's been mentioned that the fact that we appear to be much higher profile than we
Yeah.
were, say, 3 or 4 years ago.
That's what I think, that the profile as seen around the town
Yeah.
isn't as high as what the people that come to visit us.
No, I think
Give
people
us.
know of Wimborne Town Football Club in Wimborne. A lot of people don't even know we're here
No,
if they
we
don't
don't.
come this far. But we are raising the profile. It's difficult. I mean, Richard works hard with the PR. We're constantly looking at ways of trying to get the name around and everything else. I think, we do the free venue hire, for example. So a lot of people do. I mean, I think the footfall through this place during the course of the football season, given functions, football, things that Matt might get booked up during the day, youth football with the parents turning up, dropping off, coming in for a drink, and then going, another team turning up. I mean, some weeks there's over 1,000 different people actually pass these premises. So it is quite high profile. So, Dennis.
Have we investigated with the potential proposed facility things like working with the council for all-weather pitches, for example?
Well, I was hoping no one was going to mention that.
And a revenue generation capability?
We discussed, it's kind of not open for debate yet, so we won't get too heated about it yet. But if everyone's got the internet at home, go home and Google Maidstone Town Football Club. They went into, I don't know if they went into liquidation, but they almost ceased to exist, and they were using ground share for about 10 years. They've just built a brand new stadium in Maidstone, which is obviously a town very similar to Wimborne, probably a bit bigger. And they built it with a 3G AstroTurf pitch. Now, we're exploring it. We're going to go down to Maidstone. We've been invited by a guy called Oliver Ash, who owns and runs Maidstone. And basically, I think the key word, if anyone wants to write this down, is 3G for us. And we're going to go down and have a look at it. And another team that have done it is Sutton Coldfield. Now, we all assumed that 3G is a bit old, it's happened at Luton, it's happened at QPR and all these sort of places. But the actual product has progressed so much over the last 3 years that we felt it was worth consideration. Now, one of the reasons predominantly is, for example, you could have training on it all day, every day. You could have a match on it Saturday morning, and all these things create revenue.
Are we talking main pitch or training pitch?
We're talking main pitch.
Okay.
Yeah. There's obviously to lay a brand new pitch within a stadium would cost about £150,000. To lay a 3G AstroTurf pitch would be about £600,000. So there's a big difference. But that said, if in a perfect world, Wyatt Holmes, and we discussed it with them, Wyatt Holmes was to say, well, look, we were going to spend £150,000 anyway. We've got two options if we were to go. Firstly, there's a lot of grants available because you're ticking a lot of boxes. I spoke earlier about a school being located within walking distance of the football club if everything was to go to plan. Well, suddenly they've got a sports pitch available to them 24/7. So there's by going for 3G, it actually ticks an awful lot of boxes, which again opens more revenue up, more avenues up for grants, for example. And the other option is private investment. So if, for example, a business person was interested in investing themselves in a 3G AstroTurf pitch, then obviously they would want a return off of their investment, but it gives the club the facility to rent that pitch out every night, every day, apart from Saturday afternoons. And I think Sutton Coldfield, someone correct me if I'm wrong, they basically put a report together which they copied us into, and I think it was a 10-month year, wasn't it? And there was 200 games or training things went on during that 10-month period. So that's 20, it's only 20, a month, isn't it? So, I mean, I would suggest that you could just, it's endless what you could do.
Right, hosting.
Well,
Well, there's loads of possibilities.
there's lots
Yeah.
of possibilities.
I mean, I think we can,
I think, you know, it's not a definite, but it's something we're exploring. The current downside to it is you can enter the FA Cup, but you can't play. You can't play your home fixtures on AstroTurf. But I think there's a lot of League 2 clubs that are also looking at it, and I think the FA are looking at it, and it appears, given that the things that we're being copied into,
Scottish
there's-
League now.
yes, Scottish League, yeah, there's a lot of things changing by the month, so we're looking into it.
Would insurances be higher than that, and if you had that sort of...
Do you know what? I wouldn't even know, but do you know what? AstroTurf is such. I mean, my dad played on it in Aldershot about 3 months ago, and do you know what? From 15 yards, you wouldn't even know that it wasn't grass. It's only the black rubber chippings that give it away, to be honest with you. So,
All Hong Kong Football Club changed theirs.
yeah.
Roasted played on it, and he'll tell you how good it is. The Hammerley Club changed their tennis courts to AstroTurf, and they have 5-side football on it, and it's booked 24/7.
Yeah.
And they tell you this is
Well,
what
given that it's, I mean, I would like to think that at least we will have an AstroTurf pitch there. Whatever happens, we'll have what's called a mugger pitch there, which will enable our own team to at least train on AstroTurf during all weathers. But if it's deemed, I mean, we've got a lot of people to speak to. Obviously, Steve would have a lot of input into that. His players would have a lot of input into that. I think it's important that the team would be 100% happy playing on AstroTurf before that decision was ever made. That said, there's nothing stopping us having the training pitch in AstroTurf, which would again, you know, given that we've got about 18 youth teams to consider, they all need somewhere to train. So I think one way or another, you know, we will have an AstroTurf pitch, whether it be the main pitch or whether it be the training pitch, we'll have to wait and see. But given that it's probably 3 to 4 years away, there's a lot of things that will change in that time. At least most of the technology of the 3G pitches